right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Fermented Foods and Kombucha program. We're very excited to have Mark Gostkiewicz from Tri Gable Lea Farm in Colchester here with us today. Before we get started, I'd like to just mention that this program is made possible by a generous donation from our Circle of Friends group in recognition of National Friends of Libraries Week. So if you have any questions during Mark's group workshop, feel free to write them in the group chat and I will verbalize to him at the end of the presentation. So welcome, Mark. Let's get started.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks everybody. So as we get going, like I teach a whole bunch of classes. I'm thankful for Groton Public Library to have me back. This is my third one with you guys. It's pretty awesome. We did the beekeeping one, the fermented foods. I think mushrooms would be like the next one then. If I would like set the seed, the growing mushrooms one, that one's like another one of the very popular ones. And then you've hit the hits. But yeah, as we dive in, yeah, we are doing fermented drinks. And so the things that like we'll kind of go through and find out is that there's some patterns in making good fermented drinks. And a lot of it is just like customization. You just kind of, you'll know some of the basics and then you can tweak some of the flavors yourself. And these are live cultures. These are things that are alive. So like, the timings is one of those things where it's like, well, if you let it go a little longer, it's going to change the flavor profile. And so sometimes you just learn how to like kind of go with the flow of the ferment, test it one day, take a little test another day, and then you're like, oh yeah, today's the day where I'm going to harvest it. So we're going to start off with some easy fermented drinks, and the definition of that. And after we do, I think I've got three. Boom, boom, boom. Yep, three of them. And then we'll jump in, and there's going to be a big part of this that's just about kombucha and stuff like that. I do have to apologize that like the title for this class tends to talk about kefir as well, but my buddy John, he's the one who's like the expert on kefir. It would really be a joke for me to teach that when I haven't actually done it. So I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to like send you down that rabbit hole and make you think that I know what I'm talking about with that. The things that I'm going to talk about are the things that I know. John, my friend John Wojtowicz is usually my other teaching partner who talks about kefir. That one we're trying to break apart into its own like fermented drinks thing, where he talks about kefir and how you can like, which is fermented milk, and it's like it's tart. It's like a drinkable yogurt. Kefir, some people call it that kefir. So I want people who. So here's the thing: if you sign up and you're like, oh, I really wanted to do that. Here's the thing: is that if you learn the process of making kombucha, then making kefir, you will be able to read the directions for how to make kefir, get yourself some kefir grains, get yourself some milk and some containers, and you'll be able to like do it really. The point is that kombucha has a lot more finesse to it, more details and stuff like that. And after we've done this, you'll be well on your way to making kefir. Now, John's class, when he normally teaches it, he also goes into like how you can make cultured butters and yogurt and cheeses and stuff like that from it. And so that's like a whole dairy one. So coming back to this, what is this not? When we're talking about fermented drinks, we are not talking about, well, maybe if we just back up and say, what do you think when you think of fermented? What are the words that are used around the world? So I mean, in America, we think beer, we think wine. Okay, boom, boom. We got those two big ones. Okay. So here's the thing: is that sodas are tossed in there, but see, sodas have been like corrupted by the industry. The term soda. We think of like a soda fountain and stuff like that, the old timey, soda fountain, but even the word even came before there. So here's the thing: is that when we talk about like a birch beer or a cream soda or something like that, or a lemon, like a lemonade soda or something like that, these are all like wild fermented things that we then can attach a label to. So here's the thing: is that you kind of have to be a little flexible with your words, like beer and wine and stuff. Because so if you were in Russia, you'd call kombucha, you'd call it a kvass, because kvass is their word for fermentation. You know, if you were in another country, you might call it, I'm just trying to think of, like, you'd use the words for wine or for beer in those other cultures, in those other cultures. See, our American culture likes to put things into categories, and this is what I want to frame this by saying that you can call it what you want. All of these things are fermented drinks. Okay. At the end of the day, if you're like, you have a bottle of kombucha and you're like, man, this is like it's like a fruit wine. Well, then you can call it a fruit wine. Okay. If it's got that notes to you are allowed to put whatever label you want on it and call it what you want. I mean, you're not selling it and stuff like that. If you're selling things, you'd have to abide by the laws and call it a beer or a kombucha or a wine. But the thing is that, like, we also like look at, like, in America, like, alcohol levels also dictate whether something is a spirit or a beer or a wine or a kombucha. Kombucha on the store shelves had to be like pulled from the store shelves back in the early 2000s because it was like getting close, you know, it was above that 0.5% of alcohol. And if it's above 0.5% alcohol, then it's considered like a beer. And so they had to pull it from the shelves. And that's where, if you go to the grocery stores now or whatever, and you get a kombucha, it doesn't have more than 0.5% of alcohol in it. But here's the thing, is that the one that you're making on your little kitchen counter, it might be like 0.56, a little over 0.5% alcohol. We are not making something that's going to get you buzzed. All right. So if you're here in this fermentation thing, this is something where it's like we are making fermented things that are alive using bacteria and yeast and like natural cultures, but we're not really pushing it in that alcoholic direction. Okay, so that's not what this is. So it's like I could get this big old jar and I could get some honey. I could get myself some raw honey and put it in here, mix water and honey. And see, here's the thing, is that this has got some yeasts in it. The old timers making meat and everything, they would use the natural yeasts that are in the raw honey. But if you want a consistent product, then you might add like a commercial yeast. See, that's what this class isn't. We're not talking about like going and buying yeasts and stuff like that. I take this away. Anything that has like an airlock, that's not what this is. Okay, so this is not how to make how to make your worts for a beer and how to step on the grapes, mash the grapes, and ferment your grapes into wine. That's not what it is, and it's not how to make mead that way. So we get rid of those airlocks. We get rid of those things. We're not thinking alcohol. The things that we're going to produce, they might have a small amount of alcohol in them, but again, it's not enough to really have an effect on you. So I relate it to this. These were from the class that I did with you guys back, in Groton, back earlier in the year. I still got some pickled eggs left over. I still got some pickled carrots left over. I mean, why do I still have these? I have these just to show that they still preserve and everything. So these are still cloudy. All right. And remember, so if you were in that class, or encourage you to go watch that class, or go ahead to my website and buy that class. All right. But anyway, the liquid is cloudy. It used to just be salt water, clear, see-through salt water that we added to this. But what we did was we created the conditions for good bacteria to grow. And that is what pickled our food. That good bacteria produced acids that then converted the eggs into pickled eggs and converted the carrots into pickled carrots. Where did the bacteria come from on the carrots? On the outside of the carrots. All right. And so I know we peeled them, but still in the process of peeling, microscopic amounts of bacteria still were on the carrots. And then with the eggs, well, the eggs were cooked and everything. Where did the bacteria come from this? It came from using a little bit of cheesecloth and some kefir. There we go, that one again. And straining the kefir kind of overnight or for a few hours to get some whey, and that whey had active bacterial cultures in it. So here's the thing, you can still use that strategy for making some of the fermented things that we're going to do today. I'm not, though. I decided to show you how we could just use other things without kefir. And so here's the thing, I'm making parallels. Sometimes with a ferment, okay, with a natural ferment, we can get the bacteria, the yeast, and all that stuff that turns it into something different. and preserves it. We can get that from the ingredients themselves or from the environment itself. Sometimes we have to add a little bit of a culture. Now, remember, we're not talking about adding cultures that are from a packet. We're adding cultures that are, that are other fermented things. So I'm going to put these back in the fridge. We don't need them. Okay. You stay, pickled eggs. Okay. So this is a mixer that I use. All right. So this is a lemon soda. It's like a lemonade soda. Okay. And so I already popped it open earlier, but there is a little there. So this is one. I keep this on hand, and it's just like, it's a sour mix. How did I make this? I made this with kombucha and lemons. Okay, so I took the lemons and the kombucha, and I flavored the kombucha and even diluted it down a bit into a sour mix that I can use for adult drinks. Okay, so when we talk about, like, this is good enough to drink on its own as a lemon, like a lemonade soda. It's got some fizz to it and everything. None of these are going to have as much fizz as like a Pepsi or a Coke. That's because those are like supercharged with carbon dioxide. These have natural amounts of carbon dioxide that are released from the fermentation process. Okay, so where are we going to start? We're going to start with a super easy ferment. Of course, if we're working with our hands, we want clean hands. I clean my hands already. We are in this super clean environment with masks and everything. So here's the thing, is that we're in a culture right now that's using lots of antibacterial soaps, lots of antibacterial hand sanitizers and everything. You want your hands clean, but you do not want residues of sanitizers or soaps, antibacterial soaps on your hands. You want them clean of even those soaps themselves, because those getting into what you're making can kill the good bacteria and the yeast and everything, and then your ferment is failed, and you get mold growing on it or something weird, or it smells bad, and you're like, oh man, I gotta throw this out. So clean hands, clean water. Okay, I have a well, so I have well water. If you have, so we're making drinks, so I really want to emphasize good water is going to make a good ferment. If you know that when you turn on the tap, we're not going to make judgments on anybody's water. Water is the key to life. We all need water. However, you are the best judge or not as to when you turn on your tap and you pour a glass of water, does it have funky smells or anything to it? I mean, sometimes we just got to deal with it. That's what our house has. That's what our city water has and everything. So we're trying to make like a premium drink free with any of these ferments. So it might be worthwhile to go get a jug of distilled water. 1 gallon of distilled water is going to be all you need for any of these ferments. Okay. Now, if you're making lots of ferments like I am today, I'm going to need probably about 4 gallons of water altogether to do everything that I'm doing today. But I'm doing a lot. So also the water itself, it can't be chlorinated. So if it is city water that's chlorinated, still and you still like the taste and stuff like that. Although if it's got chlorinated, and it's probably got an off taste from the chlorine anyway. Just like with any ferment, if you pour into your vessel the water that you're going to use for the next day, because maybe you just want to try this anyway, even with city water, let it sit out overnight, and the chlorine will off gas out of that water. Okay, and then the next day, that's when you actually use the water. So clean hands, clean vegetables, or not vegetables, clean fruits and ingredients. I washed and scrubbed my ginger down and everything, even though this was washed at the grocery store. I know lots of other people have been handling it. Same thing with my pineapple. I gave this a good scrub. All right, I didn't use soap on it, but I just, water, and I just gave it a really good scrub with my scrubber. Okay. Same thing with the lemons. I've already pre-cleaned everything, even myself. So that makes it more efficient, but it's important to talk about these things, because with fermenting, you're encouraging the growth of bacteria and yeast, and we want to discourage the populations of unwanted bacteria and yeast. So you keep your hands off your face, you keep your hands off your body, and let's go. So the first ferment that we're going to do, we'll bring the camera down. Well, in a little bit, we'll bring the camera down. I'm going to use raw apple cider vinegar. So raw, unfiltered. Yeah, this is a brand name. Okay. There's Bragg, Bragg organic apple cider vinegar. This is cloudy. Why is it cloudy? Because it has an active culture in there. It has a mother. Okay, so by using this vinegar, bam, we're going to get some acidity. And that acidity, that vinegar is like what preserves the ferment, kicks it off, creates a really acidic environment. You're going to see that with a lot of these things that we're going to do. We're trying to create acids, create an acidic environment. This automatically just has an acidity to it. Smells like vinegar. Okay. And it also has good bacteria in it. That's how this was created. All right. They've got it out in big tanks. They take the apple cider, they pump it into gigantic thousands of gallon tanks, and then they add a culture to it and they let it ferment. So what else do I have? I have some raspberries from the garden. Now, what we're going to make, I should front load that. What we're going to make is a raspberry lemon shrub. Okay. So a shrub, you might not have ever heard of this. Just think, it's like a beer or wine or whatever. Shrub is another word. It's an old-timey word for something that was fermented, that typically involved fruits. Okay, so you can find so many different recipes for different types of shrubs. They typically involve some sort of vinegar, some sort of sugar, if I have a third hand, and some sort of fruit. And that's what you're going to see here. Basically, 3-ish ingredients. All right, so I got some raspberries from the garden, and typically it's about equal parts. Is that there's supposed to be about a cup of raspberries in there, but I pulled them out of the freezer. It looked like a cup, and then it thawed and it went down. I was like, well, whatever. It's close enough, because this is one where we're paying attention to the amount of vinegar that we're adding. But if I don't have enough fruit, that's okay. It's close enough. The recipe would be just 1 cup of sugar. Okay. Oh man, I know. So when we talk about sugar, you're going to probably be like, sugar's bad for you. Yeah, I agree. Sugar's bad for you. White sugar especially. Okay. Here's the thing though, is that what we're doing is we're using this to feed the bacteria, the yeast, the whatever we're doing, and they transform it. They gobble it up, and different bacteria do different things with that sugar. And the sugars that are in the raspberries too. A lot of what they do is, since we're using, typically there's like lactobacillus type of bacteria, is that lactic fermentation, lactic acid. They're converting a lot of these sugars into acid, which makes it tart. Okay, so that like sour, that pucker, that's what we're getting from this. So we're putting that sugar in, and that really is to feed the fermentation. To feed, well, what are we going to do? It's a cup of sugar, and going to take about a cup of this. Now, I'm doing this not over the sink, so Mr. G's got a funnel here. Oh yeah, that's my name, by the way, when I'm a teacher, is Mr. G. Because no 8th grader can say Gostkiewicz. Gotta say, I love these funnels. What you're gonna see over and over is conformity in not just using like random vessels, but like I use like these like mason jars. I use this size. This is a quart mason jar. You'll see I use these 2 quarts. All right, 2 quarts makes a half a gallon, and then I use these full gallon mason jars. What you'll see is that I really encourage you to just invest in a whole set of these things. I know that those big gallon ones that you like, even on Amazon, they're like $10 plus shipping and stuff like that. So like, I bought a 4-pack, and all 4 of them came in bubble wrapped like crazy, but it was a much better buy than just buying one, because I knew that I was going to be doing lots of fermentation and stuff. Now, you could go down to Walmart, you could buy yourself a big old jar of pickles. This was like $6 for this jar of pickles. All right. Now, still smells a little pickly, the top and everything. However, this is going to be, you can reuse jars and stuff like that. The thing is that you're not going to be able to swap in some of the other things that I'm going to show you. Like with this one, you see how there's like a filter, a little metal filter that's made to fit in a mason jar, in this half-gallon one. Over here, man, this should be a whole nother thing, cold brew coffee that I've got going in here. And in here is another one of those strainers, another one of these metal sieves, steepers. But it's made for a 1-gallon jar. It literally does not fit inside of this. So I couldn't use that jar to really make cold brew coffee the way I like to. Point being is that yes, you can get by on the cheap and stuff, but if you're really going to dive deep into fermentation, just get yourself set up with quart jars, get yourself set up with half-gallon jars and gallon jars, and then you're going to be all set. Eventually you get into bottles, you know, growlers. You get it. So if we're just looking at glassware, you get into growlers, you get into like little beer bottle type shapes, soda bottles. Okay. So what do? Let's come back to the shrub. Okay. So we took an active culture. We mixed it with food, the sugar. We mixed it with raspberries, another food source. And then what else am I going to do? I'm just going to come on down here. I had some lemons. And just because lemons and raspberry go well together, I'm going to let these ferment. So I'm going to put the lemon, the whole peel in. Now the peel itself has some bitters in it. And so when we're, you know, so not only am I juicing it, but I'm also going to get all that juice. I'm releasing the juice from it. That's why, I mean, it's like, well, why didn't you just put the whole lemon in? Well, I'm breaking it up. I'm taking the juice out so that the juice ends up in the drink. Otherwise, it's still locked in the cells if I were to just throw the whole lemon in. But putting that lemon peel in there, that's going to add some bitters to it, but not like crazy bitters. So here's the thing. The tops that typically come with this, they're fine. You can use them. However, yeah, I mean, they're two-part pieces. I love to, you know, to just invest in these plastic tops, and then here's all I can do: shaky shake. I could do it with the other top, but this one, when I take it off, it's just one piece. I can set it down on the counter, put it right back on. So honestly, this is it. When I read the directions, I've got this. I'm just mixing up the sugar and everything. How long does this sit on the counter? Following my recipe, you know, that I'm looking at here. Just going to sit on the counter for about 8 days. 8 days. Now that's an odd number. Just make it a week. Okay. So in about, what is today? Saturday. So that means that like next Saturday, I take this and I could start to drink it, or I could put it right in the fridge. Now this is a concentrate. So a shrub tends to be something that you would mix with. So if you imagine like mixing this in a cup. So take the cup, divide it into like, you know, either into fourths or something like that. And imagine only filling it up with that much of the shrub and then the rest water. You have to remember that this is going to be super tart, vinegary and stuff like that. And then you add water to it, sparkling water or whatever to it to give it even more fizz. The point being is that this is going to have the flavor of those raspberries, the lemon, and that like super tart vinegar. And it will have already kicked off some natural fermentation. So some of the sugar is already settling in this. What I'd probably do is just give it like a shake every day. Once a day, give it a little shake, put it on the counter. So just like with the pickling and stuff like that, that lesson, we keep this stuff on the counter, you know, out of direct sunlight, out of like crazy hot, you know, crazy heat and stuff like that, just in the shadows. Room temperature is fine. So again, about a week, just gonna let that one sit. And so a shrub is a concentrate, a fruit concentrated ferment. Okay, so I'm done with my brag, my apple cider, and on to the next one. So the next one is, let's see, the next one's Tapache. Okay, so with Tapache, we've got, so following again, another recipe. Where do I get these recipes from? All right, I get them from a mishmash of books that say fermentation on top. I got them like tagged and everything. So you'll find some online and stuff. See, the thing is that you want the word fermentation to be in the title, that's what you're looking for. So when I look at these, I've got this one tagged for ginger beer or ginger bug, a fruit soda and stuff like that. So I got recipes from here. My the Shrub came from this book, and then I got like a whole book on just kombucha and everything. This one's a Bible. We'll totally go over that. Point is that, I mean, these aren't necessarily my recipes to give out. So you're kind of getting a glimpse at the recipe. You're getting a glimpse as to how I put it. You could pretty much copy what I do, but if you're going off and doing your own recipes, your own experiments, I'd encourage you to follow recipes first. Get success with those recipes, then you tweak them. Okay, so as we go to the Tapache. So the Tapache one, this is one where I got it online. All right, so when I'm looking at it and everything. So what is Tapache? It is a fermented pineapple drink. Okay, so so it's like a Latin American thing, drink. They use a lot of ingredients that are native to that area. That's the thing. And so like, that's what you try to use. Are pineapples native to Connecticut? No. But they are in the grocery store. And these have come from tropical locations. And they do have bacteria and yeast and stuff on the outside of this. This is like crazy loaded, even though I washed this off. So the thing is that that's what we're going to do, is that we're going to create an environment for those to thrive. So now here's the secret with this one, is that I'm actually not even going to put in the flesh itself. Like, I'm going to eat this pineapple. What I am going to do is I'm going to take the part that I cored out there and toss that in the jar. I'm going to take the part that I cored out here, toss that in, and then the peel can go in. So if I look at this, so we've got that, you know, we've got that peel, the outside that's going to introduce bacteria and yeast to our culture, and the sugary inside that's also going to help to feed it. And this is going to feed me. Okay, so I'm going to eat that later. Now, typically when this is made in big batches. They use the whole pineapple or multiple pineapple rinds. I am not going to make a gigantic batch. I am only going to make a little half gallon of this by using half of a pineapple. And you see, I'm not really using the whole pineapple. I'm just using the rind of it. Now, I'm just going to set that aside. I'll keep working on that later. Okay. So, and then what else have I got? I've got some spices. I'm following the recipe here. I've got some coriander, got some black peppercorns, and some grains of paradise in there. Other things that would go in this, just looking at the recipe, would be like a hot pepper. Now I'm not a big hot pepper fan, so I'm not putting it in. I do like Tapache, but like I don't necessarily like the heat from it. So now what else? What I also had in there was some sugar. All right, so this is brown sugar. And so what am I going to do? I'm just going to add water. This one's an interesting one because I'm not adding acids. I'm not adding vinegar. This is one that's like, it's a quick one. It's a unique one. So I'm just going to fill it up with water. And this one's a super quick ferment. So I didn't introduce any bacteria yeast. I'm just using what's on the outside of the pineapple. And again, well, for this one, I'll go with this lid just because that's what I got in front of me. So I'm looking at that. Give it a shaky shake. Now, the time on this, just double checking, 2 or 3 days. So this sits on the counter for 2 or 3 days. Now, here's the thing though. If I put a metal lid on this is why I prefer the plastic lids. It's because the plastic lids have a little give. If pressure builds up on the inside from the carbon dioxide that's formed, it'll burp itself a little bit. It'll let a little bit out. But these metal ones, these will cinch down. They don't have a lot of give. So here's what I'm going to do is to make sure that this doesn't explode, the glass doesn't crack. If pressure builds up, I'm just going to do a little finger tight on this. Another thing that I could do is what I'm going to do with the ginger bug. I'll show you that. But for now, I've got this. Just gently tight. And then every day what I do is, so this is going to sit on the counter for like 2 to 3 days. Just going to give it a pop, maybe open it up, maybe give it a smell, make sure it's smelling good. This one's fast. This one gets crazy fizzy. What I find with Tapache is that this one will go alcoholic if you like leave it too long. If you leave it for like a 4th day, it'll go alcoholic, and it'll actually it'll have so much carbon dioxide in it. This is such an active ferment. It'll have so much carbon dioxide built up on the inside that like you want to open this up over the sink. If you let it go too long. So you're getting an introduction to somebody. So we'll put the Tapache aside. Now, this is one of my favorites. This is called a ginger bug. Now, a ginger bug is what you use to make ginger beer. Okay. So is that you have a little bit of ginger. We've got some ginger. and we've got sugar. And what we do is that this is going to naturally capture, it's going to naturally capture the yeasts that are in the air, and they are going to be able to fall through, because they're microscopic. As this breathes with a little cloth top, they'll be able to fall through, and the bacteria and yeast that are on this that are good. And what happens with this is that this is like doing a sourdough starter. If you've ever done a sourdough starter, it's the same process. Is that what I'm going to do is every day for about a week or so, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of sugar, a tablespoon of water, and a tablespoon of ground ginger. Now that's probably the trickiest part. So I use my super fine side of the grater. I'm not even worrying about peeling this. I just go straight to town with this. We need about, so here's the thing, a tablespoon, it's about like, you know, an inch-ish of ginger. Oh boy, so we got lots of ginger. Now, so we've got that grated ginger, and now I'm just taking that and adding that in here. So we give it a little swirly swirl. And what happens is that I give it a cloth top, I give it a little ring or a rubber band around the top. And this is going to start to ferment. Every day I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of sugar, 1 tablespoon of water, 1 tablespoon of ginger, grated ginger. And eventually this becomes its own culture. And then you use this to start other fruit sodas, to start other fermented things, and to make ginger beer. So it's a really fun one. You could use this to start your own shrubs, the other shrubs, instead of the other vinegar thing. So it's like a sourdough starter. Again, this is like a neat one just to watch it bubble and stuff. So let's see. I think we're good for a bit. So
before we jump back in, there was one question about getting your book recommendations. So if you want to send those to Kim at some point, we can share those with the group.
So yeah, to address that, the handout that I emailed Kim this morning. So I don't have a big giant handout for this one. This is one of those workshops where I really don't have a PowerPoint because it's all demonstration. I don't have a giant handout for this, but it has a link in the handout, and that link has like the books in like an Amazon list. So yeah, exactly. So you're gonna see those fermentation books. You're gonna see this in there. What else is on that list? So I mean, you don't have to support and buy the stuff from Amazon. It's just that I've used those things. I've bought them from Amazon, and if you want to buy them from somewhere else, that's fine. These are just like proven, simple, everyday products. It's like stuff like, stuff like this thermometer, like that. We'll talk about that and how handy that thing is. Each one of the types of jars, the bottles, even like the kombucha Scoby and stuff like that as we get into it. So good, yeah. The books are all part of that. All right, so I'm going to take my ginger. The ginger will come back later in class. So we'll just kind of pause right now and think about what we just witnessed. We witnessed some quick fermentations. Okay, so within this first hour, half hour, we just did 3, but those 3 can be expanded. The Tapache is its own thing. That pineapple one, that's its own type of drink. I'm just kind of showing you like how quick that is. The Shrub one with the vinegar, like that's one that you can really expand on and look into those. There's tons of recipes for different shrubs. And the ginger bug is one where that's got like a lot of possibilities. Just like even like this like fruit soda thing is one where the fruit sodas you can make with kombucha as a starter. You can make it with the ginger bug as a starter. You're basically taking any kind of juice, so like I'm going to read through a list of juices because it's right here. Beet juice, orange juice, blueberry juice, celery juice, cranberry juice, cucumber juice, grape juice, lemon juice, mango juice, or raspberry juice, tomato juice, watermelon juice. You take a juice, you mix it with a bug. So some of those ginger might not go so well with. So you wouldn't necessarily use a ginger bug to start them. But imagine that as you're adding a tablespoon of ginger, a tablespoon of sugar, a tablespoon of water every day, this volume is going to start to go up. You might have to switch this over to a bigger jar. You might have to let this like rest. So this just sits on the counter at room temperature, and it's just bubbling away, and you'll get like little bubbles. If there's mold and stuff growing on the top, you'd want to scoop that out and throw that away. If it's got a bad smell, throw it out. What should it smell like? It should smell like ginger the whole time. If you wanted to give this a rest from fermentation to slow it down, you'd put it in a colder spot, like the refrigerator, not the freezer. The freezer just like stops it completely. You'd want to slow its activity down. So let's say you want to take like a month off from like fermenting, but you didn't want to like lose this cool thing that you created, like a sourdough starter. Well, just like with a sourdough starter, you put it in your fridge. When you take it out of your fridge, maybe a month or so later, you'd probably have to revive it somehow. You introduce it back to the room temperature, start feeding it again, just like you would with a sourdough starter. Feed it the sugar, the ginger, the water to get it going again. And when you see it's active again, that's when you could start to use it in other recipes. Again, like making fruit sodas and stuff like that. So super, super fun. If you want to go down a rabbit hole of cool stuff, then the term to write down in your notes would be wild fermentation. You'll find there's some recent books out. I forget the author's name, about this. This is wild fermentation. We didn't add a culture to this. We're just taking the natural yeast bacteria or whatever that's in the environment. It's either on the ginger or in the environment. We're encouraging its growth. So, okay, now, the majority of this is going to be going down the kombucha rabbit hole. I'm just going to take a look at my notes. Okay, so a kvass. So again, like these terms, like kvass is on the list and everything. So that's going to be one where like there's beet kvass. So you're starting off with beets, and you're using some sort of whey. Now, in the whole scheme of things, I wasn't going to like make every drink, but if we were to just to talk through that, that's another ferment that would be like, since you're adding whey, that would be similar to the shrub. It'd be similar to the pickled eggs, where you're harvesting whey from a mature yogurt that has a culture in it, or kefir that has a culture in it, and then you're using that to ferment your beets and to get them kicking. And then you're straining out the beets and drinking the juice that's left over from that. Now, there's also like a bread kvass that's made. Point being is that like you're just going to see that like you kind of get to experiment with some of these and some of your other ferments. You never eat or drink anything that smells bad. All right, and you test it out by taking little sips and stuff. Like you first smell it, just like with the other fermentation class that I talked about with pickles and everything. Your first thing is that like you look at it, you see does anything look off, and then you smell it. See, does anything smell off about this? If it like doesn't pass those two things with your ferments and stuff like that, then you might want to just throw it out. Next one would be taste. If it tastes off, throw it out. Now with kombucha, that's one where it's like right away your eye might be like, oh, that looks yuck. so part of this is knowing what to look for. This is a good ferment. This is one that's nice and clean. There's no molds or anything growing on the top. There's no fruit flies coming out of it or anything. It's a nice consistent color down here. As we dive into kombucha, it's its own thing. It has that big blob inside. That's its culture. That's like adding whey or something like that to get it kicked off, or adding a ginger bug to something to get it kicked off and make a soda. So talk about good. Okay. So as we dive into kombucha, make sure you're just hitting the water, boiling some water. I already have a batch of tea. Let's talk about what kombucha is. So I've got this big jar. Oh boy. So this is a whole bunch of Scobies. This is a whole bunch of cultures just ready to go. And I've got friends and family and stuff that like to brew kombucha, and they don't do it year round like I do. And then they're like, hey, Mark, I want to get back into brewing kombucha. Do you have a Scoby for me? Well, yes, I do. And so what I do is I pull out one of these things and I pour off some of the liquid in here. And that's the culture that they get to start their fermentation process. What is kombucha? It's a fermented tea. So you take a sweet tea, you add this thing, one of these to it, and some of the liquid too. And what you did is you now inoculated it. You started the fermentation process with bacteria and yeast, and it transforms that tea and that sweet tea, sweet, so it's got sugars in it. It transforms it into kombucha by producing lots of acids and some cellulose. And that's what this blob is. It's just a bunch of cellulose, you know. It's like something that like, it's like you could pull this out and chew on it if you really wanted to. It'd be like a leather, like a fruit leather or something like that. There are people who eat these. I don't. There are people who do lots of different things with the cellulose that's in this. They use them for like face masks and stuff. They blend them into like a putty to use on your face and your skin, to use on scars. So I haven't gone down that road. I know that there are people who do it, and I know that this book, this one is an awesome book. I've bought, I wouldn't say a dozen, but I've bought more than 6 or 7 of kombucha-based books. None of them are as good as this one. Okay, so this is the big book of kombucha. All right, and it's by Hannah Crum and Alex Lagori. And they're the owners of Kombucha Camp, which is a company. They've been around for decades. I think it's a husband and wife team. You know, if I went back and reread the intro and everything, this is one of the few books that I have that like I've read on paper. I'm dyslexic, so that like I've gone through and like read it through paper and everything and digitally, and it's just filled with stuff. So this one has all of the medicinal sides as well of kombucha. I'm just going to talk about making kombucha as like a lovely little flavored drink to have every day. I will say that if I don't have my daily kombucha, so the kombucha has lots of beneficial bacteria and yeast in it. And so every day I have about half a bottle worth, so at least a cup's worth. And the bacteria and yeast that are in the kombucha, they go down into your gut and they help to populate your gut with good bacteria and yeast. And just like with so many other ferments, like those good bacteria that are in your gut that create a good microbiome, good gut flora, they release happy chemicals that go through your bloodstream and interact with your brain and change your brain chemistry. My point is that I drink kombucha every day, and there'll be times where I'll stop for a week. And this is only anecdotal, but what I notice is that I slip into depression when I don't have kombucha. It's not like an addictive thing. What I find is that when I have a little kombucha every day, it keeps me steady. This is a personal anecdotal thing. It keeps my body chemistry, my brain chemistry steady and calm. And I find that when I'm not drinking it, those are the times where I just don't feel good. And I might start to be confused and stuff like that. And so here's the thing, is that this has become my like daily health tonic. There are days where I forget to take it, and then like I do feel different. And I know there's placebo effects and stuff like that. Maybe that's part of it. That's why I'm not saying this is like a scientific study. I'm saying these are my own experiences with it. There's lots of other people who find that kombucha is beneficial in that way. So that's the reason, so it's just a lovely drink to have as well. And plus you can flavor it tons of different ways. You're going to see that I'm going to make 7 different flavored kombuchas in this class. 7. That's pretty cool. So now, so again, I take this culture, I put it in a sweet tea. I let that sit on the counter for a week or so. We'll get into that. We'll get into all the details of that. And then it transforms it. Now that gives me the kombucha that's just regular flavored kombucha. So if I like pull this out, if I actually stick a straw in, I can do that. Metal straw. I ain't killing no turtles. Okay, so I stick a straw in and I go down beneath the Scoby, give it a little. Yes, that's tart. So that means that like I know that this is ready. This is one that's been sitting on the counter for 2 weeks when it probably could have been harvested 1 week ago. This is one that got really sour, but I'm okay with that. see, here's the thing. Would I be okay just drinking this straight just the way it is? That's pretty tart, really acidic. What I could do to salvage that, if it's too acidic, basically like vinegar, it's basically turning itself into vinegar. And it actually, let's get into that. I got pH test strips, guys. This is actually part of the lesson. So we pull off a few of these. We do a few little tests, okay? Do a few little tests. I'm gonna take, here, let's make sure that I'm dipping it into the thing I'm saying I'm dipping it in. So I got this, dip it in. Let's do a little pH test strip. So we actually get into like a little bit of the science here. So this, when I compare it to the color chart and everything, oh yeah. Let's just bank that number, 3. This is at a pH of 3. That's pretty acidic. I toss that. Okay, so now I'm gonna take vinegar, actual vinegar, okay? And I'm gonna dip this in. I gotta kind of pour it, get it covered a little, dip it in. And so all I'm doing is measuring how acidic it is. I look at the color chart. Yeah. This is at about a 2.5. Now we'll talk about those numbers, what they mean. 2.5 versus a 3. Okay, so I want to make sure that I'm comprehensively getting to this. Let me finish my thought on that. So we're going to bank those numbers in our head, our pH numbers. So this kombucha itself, I'm going to put the top back on it. It's tart. And if I were to bottle this up now, I just have really tart kombucha, which is fine. But if it's too tart for me, what can I do? Or what if I want to share this with my kids and they're like, oh no, yuck, whatever. Just add some water. Add some water, it dilutes the acidity. So what I'm saying is at the time of serving it, add the water. Keep it as tart as it is in the refrigerator, on the counter, or whatever. But but like when it's done, it's matured, put it in the refrigerator, stop the fermentation, and keep the acidity level stable. You can keep it there for like a month. I've kept it in the refrigerator for up to a year and it was fine. It just had like a yeasty flavor to it. It wasn't as desirable to keep it a whole year, but it didn't like spoil. So the thing is that like if it's just too sour, add water until it's like at the taste that you like it. So getting into kombucha, if you like go to the store and you get one off the shelf, you open it up and you're like, oh, that was me. I did not like the taste of kombucha, and I still don't really like the taste of store-bought kombucha because it's not mine. It's not customized. What you can do with that store-bought kombucha is just cut it. You can even do 50%, half and half water, half kombucha, and you'll find, oh, I do like this. I like it this way. And then you can slowly increase the amount of kombucha versus water, and even serve it on ice. Ice tends to like dull the senses on your tongue and stuff like that. You know how like if you're drinking beer, a cold beer will taste, a cold beer won't have as much flavor and stuff like that compared to like a room temperature beer. So you can cut it. You can cut it like that. The other thing you could do is, that's what we're going to do, is that we're going to flavor it and then put it on a second round of fermentation. So remember how we're going to transform this into kombucha that's mature. We can then take that kombucha and then that's ready to go. We could bottle it, we could drink it, and just push it another few days longer, but with flavors. And that's where you really get into the fun of kombucha. All right, so now, looking at the clock, boom, we're almost at an hour around. We got to try and make this fit with an hour and a half. So, but that's okay. I'm okay going over, but I still want to respect your time. You're here for 90 minutes. Let's get to the core of this in 90 minutes. Also make it so that the editors don't have to edit out much more. So some things. As you get into kombucha and everything, your room temperature kind of matters. If you're doing this in the middle of the summer, it's going to be warmer. The bacteria is going to grow faster. And so instead of taking a week to ferment, it might be 5 days. Okay, so right now we're at a time where room temperature, I keep this on the counter and everything at my fermentation station. My kombucha from one Sunday to the next, I'm ready to harvest it that next Sunday and then start the next batch for the following week. And I'm on a 1-week rotation. In the middle of the summer, it was kind of going pretty fast. And sometimes what would happen is like, I'd have to like dump and toss some after a week or after 2 weeks. See, the thing is that the culture's still alive. If it's like too much for you and you just don't even have friends to give it away, and you don't want to turn it into vinegar and stuff like that, then you could dump it and just restart it. You'll see how we restart it every time with sweet tea. So imagine that we get into the winter months, which we're getting on, and your house is a cold house. Okay, so you're not going to keep it up into the 70s. Your house is going to be somewhere in the 60s or so. So the fermentation is going to take a while to chug along. It may take up to 3 or 4 weeks to get the same amount of bacterial growth, the same amount of acidity, the same taste in a colder environment. So what you might do is you could invest in one of these. Now I bought one of these and I never use it because I got a different tool. But these wrap around you can see right in the picture. It's a heat mat, plugs into the wall. So you plug it into the wall right next to your little jar, your big jar, this 1 gallon jar, wrap the mat around it, and it warms it and brings its temperature up. So in the winter months, you might choose to use one of these just to kick it along. You would never use these in the summer. What I use, because I don't like unitaskers. I bought that because I'm teaching a class and I just want to be able to show people that there are these products out there if you've got a small amount of space. Now I got this grow mat that I use only like in the spring to start seedlings. And I happen to have this. So this grow mat, I can plug it into the wall and it warms up the bottom of 2 jars can fit on top of this. So I'm just giving you a couple options. Maybe find that warmer spot in the kitchen or whatever. So yeah, let's dive into it. There's some other things that you might see on my jars. I have these little temperature strips. You don't need them. Okay. So a lot of kits come with them and stuff like that. I would say maybe in the beginning, the temperature strip just helps you know, okay, like right here, I can see that the little bar that's highlighted down here is at 70 degrees, 21 degrees Celsius. It's at 70 degrees. It's basically telling me what my room temperature is, which my thermostat would just do the same thing anyway. So I don't think you need these, even though some kits come with them and stuff like that. What you really need is you need the culture, the Scoby, and you need clean water, you need tea, you need sugar, and you need some vessels, some brewing vessels, typically these 1 gallon jars. These are the basics of what you need. You can reuse, I got my little props here, you can reuse kombucha bottles from if you bought kombucha off the store shelf, you rinse it out, you clean it, you reuse it, because the tops on these are different than other little tops on other bottles. These are meant to hold pressure, these little plastic tops. So if you're not bottling it, if you're not going to get these swing top bottles, this is meant to hold pressure. So this one I would classify as a fruit wine. All right, so not alcoholic, but it's a kombucha that is like super fruity. So let's see. I actually forget what's in this because I never wrote a label for it. Okay, I can taste strawberries and blueberries. So this is a strawberry blueberry mix. There's a little bit of lavender in there. Yeah, so it's a floral fruity mix. This is delightful. It's a little tart. Now this has been sitting in my refrigerator for a while. Do you see this little thing floating in there? That's a new little Scoby. That means that even while it's been in the refrigerator, it's been kind of chugging along, and this has got some carbonation in it. You see the bubbles? See those bubbles? Carbonation right inside that bottle. Okay, so let's get into the process of sweet tea. The tea, yeah. So as our tea's jamming along. So different tea. So what we're using here is real tea, black tea, green tea, oolong tea, pu'er tea, white tea. These tea, not an herbal tea. Okay, we're using a real tea, whole leaf tea that comes from the tea tree plant. Not, I don't know. It's there. All of those teas come from the same type of plant. They're just processed differently. Black tea is processed different than green tea. Okay, could you use tea bags? Yes, you can, but these are powder on the inside. You're making like a primo drink here. You want to use like the dregs of the world in tea. You can buy loose leaf tea. That's what you want to Google there. You want to Google loose leaf tea. And so I use 2 different teas, personally me. A black tea that is a Darjeeling black tea. I love it. All right, love it just for drinking hot teas and for making my kombucha. And then I've got, limited supply because things aren't coming over from China as fast as they used to. I'm on the last of mine, and my supplier doesn't have any more. A green tea, but this one has jasmine flowers in it, and so it's a jasmine green tea. And again, they're whole leaf teas. So whole leaf teas, and there's the little jasmine flower that's right there that goes on the inside in the tea. So that's what I'm using. I already brewed my jasmine green tea. What I'm going to do is just plop in my vessel right here. What's the ratio? What are we doing? So all the things I'm going to talk about are for making 1 gallon of kombucha at a time. One of these big old jars of kombucha. So to start off, I'm going to use one of these, and I'm going to make 4 cups, which is 1 quart. So this is a half gallon jar. So I'm just going to fill it up, 2 quarts. So I'm just going to make 1 quart. And how many teaspoons, not tablespoons, how many teaspoons of tea am I going to use? Anywhere from 4 to 6 teaspoons. So, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That one, 6. Okay, go for the stronger side of things. So all I'm going to do is let this steep in here. You'll notice that I'm not using something necessarily small. I'm using something as big as possible to let those teas really open up. You can use these. You can use tea bags. How many tea bags would you use? You use 4 to 6 tea bags, okay, to make this. And so now I'm going to put in my super hot water, fill it up to the 4 cup mark. And let it sit for 4 minutes. Okay, so here's the thing, is that it's like a cooking show. I already got some tea ready to go. Let's see the process for making some of this. Now, I typically do this over the sink, so I'm going to risk things and do it at the table, just to, to keep the camera view here. So I'm going to move my Scoby Hotel away. Well, maybe I might need it. So, well, no. The Scoby Hotel is when oh, by the way, what's a Scoby? My God, I always forget to get into this. S-C-O-B-Y, symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast. So it's a symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast. Basically, you have bacteria that live in this like thing that looks like snot, okay? And in the liquid, the bacteria and the yeast work together, okay? So this is one of those things where it's like, you want to get a Scoby from somebody that's they have evolved over like 8,000 years. Like I think that kombucha has been around, or the evidence of kombucha has been around. For thousands of years, kombucha has been around, and these bacteria and yeast have evolved to work together to first, like the yeast takes the sugar and then turns it into carbon dioxide and also glucose and fructose. It splits the sugar apart, and makes it available to the bacteria. The bacteria then take the glucose and it eats it and turns it into the cellulose. Now, what happens is that cellulose creates a cap. All right. So the cellulose is this thing floating right there. Okay. It creates a cover and it suffocates the yeast. What happens when the bacteria creates that cellulose? So the yeast unlock the sugars for the bacteria to create that cover, that thing on top. And then what happens is that oxygen can't get in no more. And it also protects it from dust and particles and things falling into the liquid. It has a multi-purpose. So the bacteria did that. Yay, thanks bacteria. And they keep chugging along, keep making more of that layer. And what happens is that then the yeast now doesn't have oxygen, and it goes into an anaerobic digestion, and the yeast turns the sugars that are still in there into carbon dioxide, fizzies, and ethanol. All right, there's a little bit of the alcohol in there, the ethanol. But the bacteria then take the ethanol and then convert that into acids. So the majority of the sugar that we put in here, you're going to see that we put a ton of sugar in here. The majority of the sugar get turned into lots of carbon dioxide, byproduct, and the cellulose. Then it gets turned into alcohol, but that alcohol gets turned into acids that make this sour and make this tart. So in the whole scheme of things, a lot of the sugar goes away. And the alcohol also goes away because it gets converted into all of those acids. The longer you let this sit and ferment, the more acids it produces. The more ethanol that gets produced, then more acids that get produced, and it eats up all that ethanol. No, not all. There's trace amounts of it. So, and that's why kombucha is considered a non-alcoholic drink or a low alcoholic drink because of what it does. Okay, so we got this. We've got this. Sweet tea, okay? So I got a whole bunch of sweet tea here. Now this was 4 cups. What did Mr. G do in here? I put some ice in here to cool it down so that it'd be ready for us. So remember that my Scoby is alive, and I don't want to kill this. This needs to live in an environment that's somewhere in between like 50 degrees to 85 degrees or so. If I take this and I put it, there we go, and I put it into a sweet tea, and that sweet tea is like 120 degrees, I automatically just killed my colony, and the whole thing's going to it's going to grow mold and be disgusting. So we don't do that. We test it. We got a thermometer. Okay, $12 all day long. This thing is fun. All right, you can test for like your kids before they go to school with COVID. Go breathe, and you're like, okay, you don't have a fever. You can, look and do the little forehead thing. Basically, it's a little laser thing, and it tells you what temperature it is. So I got 89 degrees in here. That's pretty close. So what am I doing? I'm gonna get a fresh vessel. So what am I doing? I'm starting the whole kombucha process from the get-go. All right, so this was tea and sugar. I'll show you how I make that with that one over there. Actually, why don't we do that? So I let the tea ferment, steep over here. Now I'm gonna, hot jar. Hot jar. I'm gonna pull this out. That's hot. It's all steamy, yes. I pull it out. Now what I've got is this jar of, I know, we got jars all out the wazoo over here. It's okay, we're just gonna slide things over. And magically, it's just gonna be the jars that we care about. Okay, so I'm gonna have an empty vessel. And I've got this super hot tea that just finished steeping. Remember, if I take this, put it in with the super hot tea, it's gonna kill it. So I don't wanna do that yet. So this tea I'm just gonna pour in here. Now, typically I would pour over the sink. Now, not because it's liquids, but because if any of these glass jars had micro abrasions or a crack or anything, a chip on the bottom of the jar, then putting something hot into this room temperature jar could make it crack and explode. That'd be like horrible if it happened to me right now on this Zoom. Point being, hot things I tend to pour over the sink so that if it did break, it'd break in the sink. Okay, so this, don't need that no more. But this, I now need to turn into sweet tea. So I'm just gonna take 1 cup of sugar. These are our measurements for making kombucha. So a cup of sugar. Remember, I'm feeding all of that bacteria, that yeast. And I need my spoon. Wooden spoon, okay. So just gonna give it a stir. And what's my goal? My goal is to make, while this is hot, this is super hot, I just want to dissolve those sugars. Until, I think about now, I don't see any like little crystals flowing around. Now this needs to cool down. This is a cooking show. I don't got time to let this cool down. So what I gotta do is add some ice. Repetition is the key to learning. Repetition is the key to learning. Repetition is the key to learning. What degrees do I need to get this down to? I said somewhere between 50 to 85 or so. I don't want to go all the way down to 50 degrees. That's a lot of ice. That's a lot of ice. That's probably going to be enough to get it down to the temperature that we need it. Somewhere in the 80s. So give it a little, whoa. Give it a little swirly swirl. I'm just going to keep using this. All right, 91, 92, 86, 85. All right, we're close enough. There's still a few ice cubes in there, but this is going to be right where we need it. So what do I have now? I've got 2 jars. I got 2 jars of sweet tea, okay? This one over here, this has got sweet black tea. This one over here has sweet green tea, a jasmine green tea, and a Darjeeling black tea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 2 batches of kombucha with you right now. If you were to get a Scoby, remember one of these things from online, you want to avoid getting one that's frozen, dehydrated, anything like that. You want a fresh Scoby that's like in like a sealed little pouch and it's got liquid in it. It hasn't been frozen or freeze dried or anything like that. You want it to be alive. What you would be doing is doing the same process, putting it into a batch of sweet tea, getting the temperature right, and feeding it that sugar. Remember, this is sweet tea, and putting that new Scoby in. Now, it's just starting to kick off. It got shipped to you from Amazon or whatever, and it traveled in the mail. It might need a little time to revive. It might not be ready in a week. Your kombucha might take a little longer to kick off. I want you to look at the volume, how big this chunk is. You usually start off with something that's only about a quarter the size of this if you order them by mail, but that's going to be fine. You do need a critical mass of excuse me, you do need a critical mass of a Scoby to start. So let me go get the other jar. I don't need this. I don't need that. Ooh, we also should do a pH testing because we still need to talk about pH and what that means. Clean. Move things. Okay. So I got 2 jars that had these like cloth tops on them. One had green tea kombucha, one had black tea kombucha. I want you to see how like the colors kind of change. But by the way, I also add a lot more water to this. We'll get there. I always add the Scobies first, then the water. So my hands are clean. I don't have any residue of soap on them. I'm just going to be scooping in and pulling out the Scoby and putting it in its new home. Oh, in its new home. Verify. I'm going to verify. What temperature are we at? We're at 88 degrees. That's fine enough. For the heck of it, I'm just going to add a little cold water. Okay, so we got this this is going to be at the right temperature. And go. La la la. La la la. Oh boy. And whoo, whoo. There we go. Now, there's little floaties of yeast in here that I'm scooping out. Just putting in here. Now remember, I'm going to put the Scoby in here. I'm also going to try and get about a cup's worth of this, and here's where I show you the grab, the 1 gallon grab. Super, that's it. That's an easy way to pour it if you've got the arm strength for it. I know not everybody does. And so I've got 1 cup of mature kombucha. Now, we didn't do a test strip. We didn't do a test strip on this kombucha. This is where all the pH testing is going to come in, and I'm going to help make sense of this. Okay, so this is mature kombucha. I can now flavor this, or I could just drink it straight unflavored. This, I add some water to. I just top the whole thing off with water until it's right about here. Good. And this is basically done. But wait, there's more. I want to do the same thing with this jar, and then I want to do the. Oh, did I mix up my? I mixed up my teas. No biggie, no biggie. Did you just see how I put the dark Scoby into the light tea, and now I'm going to put the light Scoby into the dark? It doesn't really matter. So, in the whole scheme of things, it's not going to ruin anything. It's just going to have different flavor profiles. Okay, so this has a lot of mass to it. So I'm going to put that one in, but this one, I don't need this one. I could put this in my Scoby Hotel, that big jar of Scobies. I'll be honest, I'm just going to toss it because I don't need it. And I need 1 cup of mature kombucha. And then, now what? Oh, got a little floater. A little floater of yeast. That's good. Do I have to scoop the yeast out? No. But every bit of yeast that I can get, yeast and bacteria that I can get into this new one, kicks it off and makes it even stronger. So I want to fill this up to the top with just fresh water to the top. We'll get there. Let me get some test strips. Let me get some pH test strips ready. Now we're going to learn some science. Not much science. Don't worry. It's a little science. It's a little math. Trust me. You don't have to use a calculator. There won't be a test. Ooh, my fingers are like a little acidic. Okay, 4 test strips. Fingers are a little wet. Good. Let's see. There we go. So what am I going to do? I'm going to test each one of these. So this is a key part on my handout and everything. And if you read the books and stuff, and I have friends who brew kombucha, and their kombucha, it routinely fails. It'll go for several months and they'll have several cycles of good kombucha and stuff like that. However, it eventually fails. Why is that? It's because their acidity levels. I know, and I try to have these conversations with my friends who are having poor brews. I'm like, hey, dude, it's because you've got a giant vessel. You need to, like, when you brew it, make it in a smaller vessel. It's 1 gallon one instead of a 2 gallon one. What they're doing is they're diluting the amount of acid in there with water. And what it does is it creates an environment with other bacteria and yeast that are in the air. Remember, we're just putting cloth over the top of this. They get their way in there, and the molds get in there, and they can grow in there and spoil the kombucha. And so then they ask me for another Scoby, and they start the process over, and they don't listen. They don't start off in a 1 gallon jar. When you get good at this and you have one survive for a solid year on you, go ahead and experiment with big 2 gallon jars and stuff like that, or a 5 gallon bucket. There are people who brew kombucha at that scale, but get good at it first. Show that you have kombucha that's going to, a Scoby, a living Scoby that's going to last that long. So let's get into the acidic thing. Okay, do you remember our vinegar? Okay, so vinegar is super acidic. It's 2.5. Okay, and so I'm just going to dip this into, so we got, these are freshly started. These are mature. So this mature one, just going to dip it in, take a look at the color. Last time it was a 3. It's still a 3. So we had a 3.5 for distilled vinegar. That's a 3. We'll talk about what these numbers mean. This is the other fresh batch of kombucha that's mature, not fresh, mature batch. This one is also at a 3. When we test it, and here's what I would expect is that giving a stir to these only got 1 cup of acid from this, and then it was diluted down by water. Remember, there's like a lot of cups of water in here, diluting down all the acids that were in these original ones. So we'd expect this number to go higher, meaning a lower acidity. Okay, so we dip it in, ooh, and it's kind of a green color. And when I look at it, it's a 4. Okay, it's a 4. We'll see what that means. So 3, and then this one's a 4, and the same thing with this one. Yes, another 4. Now let's talk numbers. Okay, let's talk numbers on this. So if we tested a 7 is neutral, plain neutral and everything. We're in the acid zone. Anything below 7 is acidic. Now, here's the thing, is the number I want you to burn in your head is 4.5, 4.5, 4.5. If you're taking notes, that's the number that you need to leave here. You need a number that's 4.5 or lower, meaning the acidity level is 4.5 or lower. So meaning a 3 is fine, a 2.5 is fine, all those are good. A 4 is fine, a 4.5 is fine. But if you tested this in this, let's say you got a 5. Now, what that means compared to a 4 is that this is based on a power of 10. A 4 is 10 times more acidic than a 5. And a 3 is 10 times more acidic than a 4. So the 3 is 10 times 10, 100 times more acidic than a 5. So when we look at this was a 3, and this was a 4. This distilled vinegar is 10 times more acidic than this freshly started batch. However, this is within the range of acceptability. This has a high enough acid level that it will combat and create an environment for this Scoby and everything to thrive. However, let's say that our acidic level was above a 4.5, okay? And you wanted to make it more acidic, what could you do? Add 1 tablespoon of vinegar. Stir it in, and then test it again. Typically that 1 tablespoon of vinegar, since it's so acidic, remember this is 100 times more acidic than this, 100 times more acidic than the number I got here, then this typically brings it within the acidity level. So keep adding. Now, distilled vinegar, you don't want to use the apple cider vinegar or any flavored vinegars or anything. This doesn't have anything living in it. We don't want to throw off the balance. So here's the thing, is that, like, we're kind of done, but we're kind of not. So now we're going to get into flavoring. So these two fresh batches that just had the SCOBY, I want you to see that, like, if I wasn't talking, I'd be done with this in like 10 minutes. So this only takes long because I'm talking so much. So I'm just getting a rubber band over this, making sure that there's no gaps for fruit flies to get inside. Same thing with this one, and covering it with this is just an old napkin that I cut up into fourths. And so all I do is I take these and I'm just going to put them in my fermentation station in the other room. Look at how I carry that. Hand on the bottom, hand on the top. That's safe. Okay, so we talked about teas. I'm going to get rid of that prop. Clean up a little bit. I need to reset and get all my like flavoring ingredients over here. This is a Scoby Hotel. Remember, now that you know what a Scoby is, and now that you see that, here's the thing, is that a Scoby is going to grow every time. It's going to grow a layer every time you brew it, or ferment it. It's going to grow another layer, another layer. You saw how one of them was so thick that it takes up the volume. Eventually, you could have a Scoby as big as the jar. And when you harvest a kombucha, you have hardly any kombucha, you know, so you do get to a point where you're either reserving Scobies like I do, like a weirdo, but that's okay, I'm into this. Or you're repurposing them, and you're reading the book, or you're tossing them like I just did. Okay, sugar. Yes, we're going to do, now what we're doing in this last part is a secondary fermentation. We are learning how to take the kombucha that looks like this and turn it into this. Remember this like fruity wine? And then I got this one. This one's my favorite. It is just ginger and lemon. This is like my go-to. Oh, it's delightful. Just imagine that you just smelled like just fresh ginger and lemon. It's awesome. So that's what we're going to make. So am I going to put it in this growler yet? No. I'm going to brew it. I'm going to ferment it in here. And then 3 days from now, there's your number right there. So how long does the regular kombucha? To get this kombucha to set on the counter for about a week or a week to 2 weeks or so, okay? To turn into this acidic kombucha. And then I'm gonna, now that I took the Scoby out, now I'm gonna put flavors in it. And the flavorings I'm gonna let sit on the counter and let it meld in here, and a new Scoby will even form on the top. And we're adding more sugar, more food to it to sweeten it up as well, because I like stuff that's a little sweet. But some of the sugar is gonna be turned into carbon dioxide and another Scoby and cellulose and stuff like that. After about 3 days, the flavors of the ginger and the lemons will be infused in this. And then I take this over to the sink, I get my growler, and I get my strainer. Okay, so go big on strainers. Okay, on funnels and strainers. All right, you're working with liquids and they're gonna make a mess. Don't you use the little dinky ones. All right, so by the way, I think this is in like that Amazon list. And what I would be doing once the flavoring is done is I'd be pouring it, straining it in here. Some people strain with cheesecloth and stuff like that. I don't bother. If there's little itty bitty floaties in here, that's fine. But that's a pretty fine sieve. That's gonna get all of the seeds from the lemons, the pulp from the ginger, and it makes it, look at it. That's pretty darn good. It is cloudy, but it's so flavorful. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do now, is to make this ginger lemonade. So there's a little bit of labor in it. I'm realizing, you know, I could have done some of this ahead of time, but at least you'll get to see the full result. So, all right, I got my ginger back. Remember I said this was coming back? So that's going to go in the jar. And before I forget it, I'm going to put between a half a cup to a cup of sugar in here. If you don't like a lot of sweet in your drinks and stuff like that, then just go with like a half a cup of sugar. But we are kind of feeding the bacteria yeast a second time again, but they're not going to have as much time to digest all of that sugar. So I'm being honest with you, some of this sugar is just purely for flavoring. So I am going to put in like a whole cup of sugar. If you're looking for something that has a lower amount of calories and stuff, then don't put as much. Ooh, now look at that. See how that all fizzed up? That's because the crystals in the sugar crystals have the CO2 molecules latching onto them, and they're getting released from this. That's proving to you that this is carbonated. Okay, so what am I doing? I gotta shred some ginger. All right, gotta shred some ginger. I got shredded a lot of ginger. I'm basically going to shred like half of this. All right, so that's like probably 2 inches of ginger. It's a lot of ginger. Did I peel this? No. But because I want something that's got a lot of ginger punch, I put a lot of ginger in it. Remember this, I'm not going to end up eating this. I'm using this as a flavor. Camera shaking. Oh yeah. That's what happens when you put the laptop on the table. Sometimes I've gotten shy with the ginger and I've been like, you know what? I'll try to make the ginger last longer. And then it's like, it's just not as flavorful. Holy moly. Because remember, I'm putting this inside of a whole gallon of a drink. So I want a lot. Okay. Look at that pile. That's, for scale's sake, there's my hand. There's a big pile of ginger right there. Okay, so all that's going in. So you can see I'm flavoring this just with ginger and with lemons. I'm going to put 4 lemons in, and honestly, that is all to this recipe. But you'll also see when I put these lemons in, you'll see that I also, just like with the shrub in the beginning, I put the whole lemon rind in as well. Remember, it all gets filtered out. Seeds, everything. It all goes in the end. I'm looking at the clock. We're almost at 90 minutes. But we're going to quickly make, right after this, we're going to quickly make 6 other bottles of kombucha. 6 other flavors. And you're going to see the patterns for this. Then we can also have questions if people have questions. Holy moly. That's a lot of lemon juice. 4 lemons worth of juice. Now, as I pour this in, I'm also going to take this to the sink. I'm going to rinse this out, get all that pulp in there too, and I'm going to bring the water level of this right up to the top. So with this one, like this is acidic enough that I can add water to it, dilute it down a little bit, and it's still going to be super acidic and tart and taste delicious. There we go. So where does this go? That right there. Like I said, I'm going to put a little plastic top on this because that'll off gas if it needs to. It won't build up pressure. I filled it almost to the top, leaving a little bit of room there. And this just sits on the counter with all of the other kombucha stuff fermenting for about 3 days. If I leave it 4 days, it's no big deal. 5 days, no big deal. It's just going to be tartar. It's going to be more tart. So now, oh boy. Now let's set up for flavoring all these other ones. So, big cutting board. Now, so here's hoping. I've got this 1 gallon jar. Now I'm hoping that I can get about 6 bottles from it. I can add some water to this to just give it a little more volume. That won't kill the acidity. As long as the acidity stays at 4.5 or lower, we're good. Again, why did I do that? This is mature kombucha. I'm just going to mix it up, give it a quick little mix. What I want is I'm going to part this out into 6 different bottles with 6 different flavors. I'm going to make a 6-pack, flavor 6-pack. Good. And just for verification purposes, let's just check its acidity. You know, just to prove, I added the water in and just make sure what it is. Yeah, we're still at an acidity level of 3. Okay, still pretty acidic. Remember that distilled vinegar was at 2.5, so it's nearly there. You know, it's not quite there. But I want a consistent amount of kombucha. I don't want to add water to the bottle. I want to add water to the big thing, dilute it in the big vessel, then piece it out into these 6 little bottles. So, oh man. So, all right, we're gonna go with this one, coconut chai. pretty simple. Okay, so I'm gonna get my funnel, put my funnel in there. And this morning, I cracked open a coconut with my kids, and we got like a whole bunch of coconut water from it. So what you're gonna see is now volume amounts. If I was flavoring a whole gallon at once, I would be thinking in terms of like for juices and for coconut water, I'd be thinking maybe like a whole like quarter cup of this inside that to flavor it. Now, I've only got like a little bottle, so I'm thinking tablespoon of coconut water. Now with spices, I've got chai here. With spices, these are potent. If I was flavoring in here, I'd think teaspoons, maybe tablespoons in a whole gallon. But since I'm doing now like a little jar, I'm thinking, eighth of a teaspoon, quarter of a teaspoon, probably not more than that for spices, especially something potent like cinnamon. I'm only gonna wanna use a little bit of cinnamon because it goes a long way. Okay, so I want you just to see like how fast this is and how we're gonna get all these varieties. So remember how I said, I'm gonna put like about a tablespoon, roughly a tablespoon of coconut. There we go, a little extra, who cares? Of coconut water. And then the tiniest amount. I want to get like a dedicated 1/8 tablespoon for some of these small spices of chai. This one I don't need a funnel for, I don't need it sticking to the funnel. I'm just going to do that chai tea right in there. Now that's not a lot, but that's going to be enough to flavor this. And then I'll use my funnel. Get the cap on the chai. And again, I would normally do this over the sink. This is a risk I'm willing to take. How far do I go? I want to leave some room. Now, I'm stopping just short of where I need to go. I'm going to fill up these other bottles, see if I have enough to fill it up more, but I'd want to leave an inch or so, an inch or more at the top of airspace so that I lock these up. Now, so the process of flavoring these in the bottle like this is, well, this sits on the counter for 3 days, just like that other secondary fermentation. This one right here, the lemon and ginger one. You can already start to see it's got that chai in there floating around and the coconut in there. So this is one where, because of what I used in it, I used like a juice, coconut water, and I used chai. If I drink this, there's not going to be much texture in it. I could probably just drink it straight and not have to filter it out. Like this one's going to be fine. But with the other ones that we're going to see here, we probably want to filter them out. Just like, remember how I said with the growler, I take my strainer and I take this and I would filter it out, but I would do that from one of these that's flavored into one of these that's empty. And then I would have a nice clean little jar, like a bottle like this, that looks all pretty and doesn't have anything floating in it. So again, it's 3 days on the counter. Take it, bring it to the sink, and if you want a beautiful, clean bottle to drink out of, then strain it. Okay, so let's do another one. Okay, this one's labeled as the Tri Gable Lea Farm blend. This is one that, what is my blend? So this is our Farmhouse Blend. It's a lemon. So we do our same little deal with juicing a lemon. Except I'm not going to put the whole peel in and everything because it's in a bottle. I have to remember that anything I put in that bottle, I got to try and get out, later on. Now, am I going to juice the whole lemon? No, just half a lemon. Half a lemon's worth of juice is going in there just to make it tart. And this is one that I'm going to end up filtering later anyway. So the lemon, and then the spices, the herbs for this one. This is my own blend. It's equal parts of lavender, chamomile, and rose petals, and hibiscus flowers. This is like a beautiful floral aromatic blend. It's my favorite. So what am I looking for? Sorry. This is one where, again, as I'm looking at this, I'm just going to do 1 little teaspoon. I'll do a half a teaspoon in here. I just need something that's not wet. That's why I got a little different funnel for this, so that those herbs didn't get caught on a wet funnel. So I got that one. I got that one, lemon juice and all that. And this is going to turn a beautiful pink color when it's all said and done. after it's sat on the counter for 3 days. I hope you get that what we're really doing right now is, the key word here is artisanal. We are making artisanal batches of kombucha. Okay, so this is a flowery note one. Floral note. Okay. Another relatively simple one that's going to involve the juicer. I think this is the last one where I'm going to use the juicer. It's going to be orange. I could use probably a quarter of an orange, but I'm going to use half of the orange. Just, half of an orange worth of juice. I think that's it for that. And then my dry herbs. I have a little bit of mint. So I'm looking for my little spoon. There's my little spoon. A little, like 1/8 of a teaspoon of mint. Now, you wouldn't normally think oranges and mint go together because, well, people don't make that, but it does go well together. Orange, mint, and there it is. An itty bitty amount of vanilla extract. And then kombucha. So this one is like a vanilla mint, like orange crush. Honestly, the rest of this is just showing you inspiration for different batches of things that you could make. All of these recipes are recipes that you can just come up with on your own. And invent your own recipes just by mixing things together that you like. I'll put this coconut water away. We just got three more. All right, so I'm going to do the peach one. So this peach one, when I look at the little peaches that I have here, I've got, these were just frozen peaches. And this is where I want to open your mind here. You can use canned, dried, fresh, frozen vegetables and not vegetables, fruits with this. However, know that they're going into a bottle that's got like a little top like this. This is the first one where I have to kind of think about it and go, will I be, if I put this in, will it expand? Will that expand inside and I won't be able to get it out? Well, it's a peach. So for these peaches, all I'm going to do, since these were like little tiny frozen peaches that came from our garden, came from our orchard, I'm just going to give them a little slice so that as I put them in, I'll be able to get these out of the bottle later, even if they do expand. I hope that like really rings true. Never force anything in the bottle because you'll never be able to get it out of the bottle. So this one's going to have peach. Oh my God, this is like such a simple one. Peach and cinnamon, just a couple little shakes of cinnamon. Little bit of cinnamon goes a long way. This is like, it's like a peach cobbler, that peach and cinnamon flavor. Awesome. Now, what you'll notice that I haven't done to any of these yet, for the sake of time, I'm going to do it later, but for this one, because it's on my mind, I'll do it. What I should also be doing with each of these, remember when I made that big batch over there, I also had to put sugar in there for the secondary fermentation. So how much sugar should I put in each one of these? 1 teaspoon. So 1 teaspoon. If you like it sweet, then you could go up to a tablespoon, but 1 teaspoon of sugar per each one of these. Now you'll find that there are times where you'll pop the top off of this after the 3 days and it'll go poof. And that's not from that sugar that you put in. It might be from the sugars of the thing you put in it. Ginger and pineapple and like so many fruits have sugars of their own. I find that when I make ones with apples or with pears, that the sugar levels in those, since I'm using them fresh seasonally, the sugar levels in those are like through the roof, and I don't necessarily have to add sugar to those. However, really with the herbal ones, this herbal one I should crack open again. Remember the one that had flowers, the chamomile and everything like that. I should crack it open, and while I remember it, put 1 teaspoon of sugar in it. Remember to keep feeding the bacteria and the yeast that are in there. Do I need to put sugar in the orange one? No, because it came from a juiced orange. It's got enough sugar in it already. The coconut chai one, there's not as much sugar in the coconut water as you'd think. So the coconut chai one, I am going to put sugar in. So you see what I'm doing is I'm kind of reading the ingredients, guessing with the ingredients, what I need to do in order to keep that bacteria and yeast from chugging along. 2 more flavors. So with this, you're going to see, starting with a whole fruit, just like the size. So with an apple, you're really only going to need, like, I'm going to go with that amount. Not much apple. Slice into little thin pieces. And that right there is enough. That's a small amount. That's enough to gently put in the bottle and flavor this whole bottle and make it taste like apples. The rest of this I eat. Okay. So this one's going to be a fun one. Remember, while I'm doing this, the apple does have sugar in it. So do I need to add sugar? No, I don't need to add sugar. I'm going to add just 1 clove. Now, this is not ground cloves. This is 1 whole clove. If this was ground cloves, I'd be using like a itsy bitsy pinch of cloves because they're super powerful, but it hasn't been ground up. So 1 tiny clove in there, and then a little sprinkling of nutmeg and a little sprinkling of cinnamon. Not much, not much. Notice that those are just sprinkled amounts. I didn't even bother measuring those out, because even measuring them out would be too much if it was like 1/8 of it, just a sprinkle of each one. And this is going to turn into a spiced apple one. Now, of course, different apples have different characteristics. If you really wanted to bring out the apple flavor, you could put in a lot more apple. You'd probably just get more fermentation, more bubbling from it. Okay, last flavor. So, cool. So you'll see, like, this is certainly one where I'd probably want to strain it afterwards, after the 3 days on the counter. Okay, so last one. This one is pear. So this is a pear from the garden. And again, just like with the apple, I don't need much of this pear, but what I do need is I need to make sure that the pieces are small enough to get them out later on. So even these, some of these I'm going to slice even thinner, because they will expand. Guaranteed, they're going to expand inside the bottle. It's funny, like nearly every time I use pear, I love the flavor and I put it in, and it probably does develop a good amount of alcohol, but not enough to get, to get messed up on. All right, so and then also what I have here is some frozen cherries. I'm just gonna kind of tear these up, and really when I'm looking at this, I think 1 cherry is all it's going to be to flavor the whole bottle. 1 cherry and its juice. So, and the spices for this one, none. Let's see, or no, cinnamon. So I need to get the cinnamon from the other one, which is here. So remember, I'm switching to this one. So you can see if you're doing, I suggest that when you're first starting off with this, you experiment and you do a whole 6-pack worth of different flavors 1 week, and then you do a whole 6-pack of flavors another week. And so this one, just pear, cherry, a little bit of cinnamon, and then the kombucha. And then you find the flavors that you like. And then you brew them in 1-gallon sizes. And then you start to give them away to friends. Cool. There we go. Fun times. Fun times. Yeah, I'll give them away to my wife. She gets like a Starbucks cold brew. She doesn't drink my cold brew, but she buys Starbucks cold brew. So I always have these jugs left over, and then I fill them with kombucha, and then just like give them to people. We're right there. We're right there for time for questions or anything. If we just reviewed things, what you've seen is that early on we did those simple fermentations, remembering that we're not like, it's not a beer or wine or whatever. We're kind of flexible with our word, like a ginger beer is really made from a ginger bug, where it captures that ground up ground up ginger and sugar, and then it sits on the counter for many days. Again, key thing is like follow a recipe, find a good guide, and monitor it. And you know, with any of these things, use your nose, use your taste buds. And if it tastes or smells off, toss it, you know, and then ask yourself, why did things go wrong? Think about all the variables that we talked about. The kombucha is one where you see that like acidity levels, that can be a big one. But also like, you know, temperatures can also change it as well. It, you know, depending on the environment that you're in. So I don't know, any questions? Are we good? Or yeah, what do we got?
We do have one question.
Sure.
So they are asking, how many days until the ginger bug is ready to be used? And would you store it in the fridge or on the counter once it's ready?
Either way, if you're going to keep, so with the ginger bug, if you're going to keep using it, then you just keep it on the counter and you keep feeding it. Just like so like somebody who's making sourdough bread every week, you would end up keeping your sourdough starter on the counter just all the time and keep feeding it and then pulling from that starter to make your bread. The same thing with the ginger bug is that if you're using it to make drinks, then you just keep it on the counter and you keep feeding it. If you want to keep it, to stop it from being like crazy activated and slow it down, you put it in the fridge. And how long will it take to get that? Well, remember, you're going to get like a critical mass of foamy bacteria, you know, that carbon dioxide bacteria, that bubbly stuff, and ginger and water and stuff like that. It's going to get like about a cup's worth. It's going to take about a week. And then to use it in any of the recipes, you need at least a cup's worth. So it probably takes like, you know, a couple of weeks. Like thinking back to when I made ginger bugs, I was really slow with it. I would let it go for a couple weeks before I even had enough to try it in a drink. See, here's the thing. Now that I make kombucha, I can make a ginger bug, boom, in like a few days, because I take the mature kombucha. I use that to start I mean, honestly, what is this? This is pretty much like one giant ginger bug made with kombucha as the starter. So now remember, this is going to take another 3 days on the counter, and it took a week just to get the kombucha to make this. This is why I love teaching the kombucha classes, because if you learn how to make it, you can use kombucha to start so many other things. You could use kombucha to, you know, as the vinegar base in your shrub. Okay, you can use the kombucha as a starter with the tapache, although it doesn't need it, but you could also give it a lot of tartness with it. You'll find that it's super versatile, just like kefir would be super versatile. But kefir is a milk-based thing, so it's really why it would involve its own total category. So we got answers for the ginger bug one. But yeah, anything else?
So we have two more questions. The first one is, do you use black tea or green tea? And then the second is, how do you safely put your Scoby to sleep?
So black tea or green, any of those teas. So your primary fermentation that makes the whole gallon, you want to use a regular unflavored tea at your start. So nothing like I'm trying to think of like some of those flavored teas, but anyway, not an herbal tea, not a flavored tea. You want to use just a black tea or a green tea, and it doesn't matter. If you looked at what I do, I have one that chugs along with black tea and one that chugs along with green tea. And today I happen to mix the batches up. So now that going forward, one of them is going to be the new black tea one. One of them is going to be the new green tea one. So the answer is I use both. Yeah. And how do I put the Scoby to sleep? Bye guys. Love you. Have fun. They're going on a walk. So putting the Scoby to sleep, and it's like in this. So this, I don't like it to chug along, and this baby, all right, of all these Scobies, this is a Scoby that's to sleep. Putting it to sleep means that I put it in this jar, I give it one more big batch of sweet tea that's not diluted, it's just concentrated. You know, I didn't add water to it. I just, how much? Remember when I made the sweet tea with like 4 cups of tea that's concentrated and a whole cup of sugar in there? I take that, I put that into this jar with these Scobies, and then I put it in the basement. Why the basement? Because the temperatures there are the coldest in the house, but I'm not putting it in a refrigerator. people who put the refrigerator brings it below 50 degrees. When you go below 50 degrees, the bacteria and yeast go into different biological modes, and molds and stuff can take over, even in your fridge with an open top and stuff like that. So if you're talking about your Scoby, putting it to sleep, typically a basement situation is going to be the best bet. Your basement, somebody else's basement. No, this one, it sits for about every 2 months. I wouldn't say every month. Every 2 months, this evaporates down and the Scobies grow. And I have to throw some of the Scobies out and add more sweet tea in every couple months. So I'm choosing to maintain this, if only for myself, if not for other people. Okay.
Awesome. Now, a follow-up question to that one is, to keep the Scoby alive, do I have to rebrew tea, or can I just add sugar? Which I think you just answered, in that you add the tea.
You want to do a sweet tea. Yeah, you want to do a sweet tea. So remember that these have evolved to live for a long period of time and to keep reproducing in the sweet tea environment. Remember, thousands of years, they have evolved to live in this. The only reason I'm able to take it and turn it into this that has ginger and lemon and stuff like that, it hasn't evolved to live in this for a long period of time. It's because I am taking it out and starting a new batch and perpetually keeping it alive, keeping that baby alive in the sweet tea environment, in the sweet tea environment. And then I'm harvesting out the kombucha to make these other crazy drinks. Yeah.
Fabulous. So we've still got a few more questions coming in. So after 3 days, do you stop fermentation of the small flavored bottles by refrigerating them?
Yep. Yeah. I guess to clarify, anytime I'm kind of saying stop, it means drink it or put it in the fridge. Yeah. So.
And then I noticed that you go to the sink for water. Is your water filtered, or do you use tap water?
Yeah, our water's just it's well water. So, and it only has a particulate filter on it. I don't have hard water. I honestly don't know if hard water would have any negative effects. You got to imagine that, again, 8,000 years, people were making this with water from their local wells and streams and rivers and stuff like that, and bringing that into their house. So, but doing that with tea and with some sort of sugar source. Oh, you're welcome. I see the thank you. Awesome.
All right. Does anyone else have any other questions, comments? I don't see anything trickling in. So I think I will just thank you as well. This was great. A fantastic presentation on kombucha. And again, big thank you to our circle of friends for paying for it and sponsoring it during National Friends of the Library Week.